Good evening, everyone. We're going to begin our program. Welcome, welcome. We have many ways to say welcome in Woburn. We say benvenidos, benvindes, bienveni, welcome, benvenuto, shalom, salam, welcome. Did I miss one? We're delighted to have everyone together this evening. My name is Chris DeMeo. I'm the Executive Director of Know Your Neighbor Woburn. We have a wonderful panel and group of guest speakers tonight. We'd like to begin our program with our land acknowledgement. Christian is going to read our land acknowledgement. Thank you, Christian.
Know your neighbor.
Nice and loud.
Know your neighbor, Woburn. Landing acknowledgement. Know your neighbor, Woburn wishes to acknowledge that this event takes place on the ancestral homeland of the Massachusetts, Pawtucket, and Abenaki Nation, past and present. We acknowledge and honor with gratitude the land and waterways that our indigenous neighbors have stewarded throughout the generations, and recognize that the indigenous people of Massachusetts have been unjustly displaced from their land.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christian. We have three wonderful guest speakers. These are folks who are our neighbors and our friends here in our city of Woburn. Andrines Ronadin was born and raised in Haiti. Her dad was in the military and forced to flee to the United States when she was just 3 years old. She was finally reunited with her family here in the United States when she was 13. And, when she was 18, she arrived here in Somerville, where she went to high school. After high school, she remained at home with her mother for a time to take care of her during an illness, and then she entered Bunker Hill Community College, where she studied human services. She has been working in the field of human services now for many years. She has lived in Waltham, and when her beautiful boy Marcus was born, she began to look for a larger place to live in a nice family community with lots of place for him to play, and we were grateful that she came to Woburn. Andrines is an organizer and a board member of Know Your Neighbor Woburn. She's the Shelter Services Director with the International Institute, serving our new Haitian community here in Woburn and throughout the region. She provides a lifeline of emotional, social, and trauma-informed care, and she likes to think of herself first and always as a health worker. She's the founder and executive director of Cognitive Holistic Healing, which is a nonprofit that provides mental health literacy support for parents with children with mental health diagnoses. And she has been very active in the Haitian American Medical Association. Andrines has also recently been honored by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts House of Representatives with a Black Excellence Award. Please join me in welcoming Andrines. I have had the good fortune to develop some relationship and get to know Andrines a bit, and I'm so delighted that she was willing and interested in coming to share some of her story with all of us tonight. Andrines, maybe we'll ask you to start by sharing some of your experiences when you arrived here to the United States, coming from Haiti at that high school age. What were some of the challenges and some of the experiences that you remember?
Hello everyone, again Andrines. It's an honor to be here tonight to share my story with you. Oh my God, where do I begin? It was November 2001, 2 days before Thanksgiving. So we arrived at Logan Airport, freezing. Mind you, we got on the plane in Haiti. It was nice and warm, hot. And then we got here, and then they're handing over heavy jackets, telling us to put this on before we go outside. I'm like, why? The heat was on inside. I'm like, why? It's hot. So I didn't put my coat on. Walked outside, and to my surprise, oh my God. I wanted to turn around and get on the plane and go back home right there and then. So there was some pushback on my end to come here because I had to come because my parents said I had to. That I personally didn't have any, reason to, bad reasons to leave Haiti, just like a lot of our newcomers, are experiencing. I think coming here was simply for our family to reunite, and my parents decided that this side of the world was better for us to do that. But as I grew older, I realized that they were right. So when I got here, November 2001, it was in the midst of the holidays. So a few days before school closed, after the time after Thanksgiving, before and between Christmas, they did all what they had to do to get us enrolled in school. So did some testing with the public school system in Somerville, which is where my father lived, and I was eligible to continue 10th grade, which is where I left back home. I repeated a grade back home, which is why I was 18 and still in 10th grade, because I got really sick and lost a whole year of school, so I had to repeat the 7th grade. So I was able to continue 10th grade come January after the holidays, and I graduated. They had me do my MCAS that year, and I passed and went on to 12th grade the following year. So the biggest challenge for me was communicating. Not because I didn't know English, but my accent was so off. Like, I remember several times going to the doctors. I didn't need an interpreter. I was able to communicate by writing. And I remember meeting a doctor for the first time, and I walked around with my little notepad and pen so I could write down whatever I needed to say to people. And she was asking me questions, and I was writing down the answers. She's like, "You speak perfect English. Why are you writing this down? Just talk to me." And then I opened my mouth to say the first thing. She said, "Oh, okay, you can write it down." So I did take 4 years of English back home. So I learned all the grammar and all the thing that goes with the language, but the accent was off. But over time, I watched a lot of cartoons. I listened to a lot of music. I repeat when people say things. I would sit in front of the TV for hours just repeating what people were saying. When I didn't understand something, I would look it up on the dictionary to see what it meant. And here we are today. You guys can understand me today, hopefully. So I often get, "What do you mean you weren't born here? You don't sound like you weren't born here." And I feel grateful when people say that, because not a lot of people can get to that point that I'm at. So my biggest challenge was the language, not because I didn't know it, but because the accent was very heavy on my end. And then when I got here in high school, I learned what segregation was. Back home, I didn't. My family, a lot of us are light skinned. My grandfather on my mother's side looked like Chris, looked like a Caucasian man. He's a French descent. As you know, Haiti was colonized by France. So green eyes, silky hair, long nose. I didn't see or experience any discrimination or segregation or anything like that. But when I came here at the high school, during recess, and I'm seeing how all the Haitians are sitting over there, all the Hispanics are sitting over there, all the Caucasians are sitting over there. I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, why is everybody sitting in their little corners? Like, how are we supposed to learn about each other? And I needed to learn the language and better my accent. So I would sit with the people that I wanted to sound like. So I was lucky that they didn't reject me. So I was able to sit with other friends from other places. And, eventually I was able to improve. And we are today.
Wonderful. Thanks. We want to introduce Brianna Dominguez. Brianna is a Woburn Memorial High School student, a sophomore, right, Brianna?
Yes.
Very active member of the Woburn Memorial High School Embrace Club. The Embrace Club is a community, a multicultural student community dedicated to growing awareness and support for diversity, equity, and inclusion at the high school. and in the larger Woburn community. Students gather frequently to support each other, engage in difficult conversations, and plan, host, and participate in events on issues such as race, culture, heritage, social justice, community building, equity, and more. Brianna is a varsity cheerleader. She's active as a leader in the Survive the Drive program. And she was recently, you weren't kidding about that sound, huh, Danielle? She was recently elected secretary of the class of 2027. Brianna is also quite active and volunteers for the Chica Project, a Quincy-based organization that empowers young women of color. And Brianna loves to talk about her family. And so we will ask Brianna to tell us some about her family traditions, her family culture, and most importantly to Brianna, her family's moral code and the morality that she's learned from her parents.
So my father, he grew up in Dominican Republic, and when you think of Dominican Republic, you think nice beaches, hotels,
Right.
and everything.
Right.
But to me, Dominican Republic is a place where you go and you have freedom. It's a bunch of farmlands and basically family. My dad grew up in a town called Los Campos. He grew up with no electricity, no water supplies. All he had was a tiny house, his big family, and love. On a daily basis, he would have to walk once a week, miles and miles, or even on a horse to find the nearest water supplies so that could last his family probably a good week, almost month. He even worked with his grandfather, working with the neighbors that lived miles and miles away, asking them, how much pounds of meat do you need for the week? And that would be their dinner. So the process of him coming to America was very difficult because it started with they did the paperwork, and then they only accepted my grandfather, his dad, to come to America. And he was here probably in Boston for the first 7 years of the process by himself while his wife and his 4 kids were down in Dominican Republic. So during that time, the immigration department told him, you need to make your income stable so you can bring your family here. So he ended up getting a job as a dishwasher at the Museum of Fine Arts. And he worked there for 30 plus years. And he always tried to save enough money so he could come and visit his family once a year, which was on Christmas, because he knew that was the most memorable tradition for his family. And then after a couple of years, probably around the early 2000s, I would say, he had enough money to bring his wife, which meant they had to leave their kids back in DR with someone they trusted, like my grandmother's mother or my grandfather's mother. So they were down here, and my dad took the responsibility to take care of his siblings while his parents are working, trying to get their kids over here. So when my dad was 18 years old, he finally got the call from his parents saying, you and your siblings can come to America. So when they came here, they lived in my grandfather's aunt's house. And it was 2 families in one house. So I remember my dad would always tell me the one thing that the most difficult he faced throughout his life, his process in America, was not feeling wanted in a way. He felt like he was invading people's privacies, felt like he was just there, like a figure. So he took it upon himself working, trying to look for jobs, and realized the one thing he needed was to learn the language. So he took classes at Madison High School in Roxbury, and he got free lessons to learn the language. He didn't learn, it took him a long time to learn, but he managed himself to go to Boston Logan Airport and apply for a job to work at Hudson News. He worked there for a while, and then he met a young lady down there, my mother, and that's where she helped him learn the language more, learn the true what it really is to be an American. What I learned is that many people, when they want to come to America, they think that, oh, it's going to be an easy breeze, everything gets handed. But the one thing is, when you come to America, is you have to put in the work. You have to show the reason why you're here. You have to show why you worked your butt off to be in this country. So my dad went through a lot, and so when he was working at Boston Logan Airport, he had to learn how to work with people he didn't like, work with people he liked, and then he also had to learn financial issues. I remember the first probably 5 years of my life, we moved from house to house because my parents struggled. But they learned that if we would work together as a family, the struggles go away. So my dad started out as someone who helped package papers and magazines for other people to buy and read on their nice long flights to go on their vacations, to the position where he's a supervisor at a retirement home for the maintenance department. And as of Sunday, October 27th, it marks his 14th year working at that job.
Bravo. Bravo.
So, but the main morality that my dad taught me was that education and hard work is very important. Because when my dad came here, he did not go to college because he knew that if he went to college down in Dominican Republic, his diploma would mean nothing up here. So he worked, and he always reminds me and my siblings to always do your best in school. He goes, it doesn't matter if you come home with a C or a B, or it'd be great to show up with an A. But he goes, I want you to have the education. I want you to work for your dreams. Because he always says, in order to succeed in your dreams is hard work. So I always make sure to come home with the best grades I can, because my education is not for myself. It's for my parents, because I know they work hard in their life to give me what I want and need in my life. So I'm working hard right now so I can pursue a career in the medical field in the years to come. I want to show that you come from nothing doesn't mean you're always going to have nothing. Because the hard work will pay off. In the end, you'll always have something.
Bravo. Thank you. Thank you. Peter Lutic is a lay leader and active member of the North Congregational Church. I've had the pleasure to get to know Peter a bit in some detail the past several weeks. He's married to his beloved Karen and has 4 adult children and 2 grandchildren, and boy, does he love to talk about his family. He is, as a boy in Haarlem, the Netherlands, Peter dreamed of traveling and living around the world. He came to New York City as a young man to study undergraduate studies at Columbia University, where he met the love of his life, Karen. They relocated to Indonesia, where he did his master's degree studies, and he's also done his doctoral studies abroad as well. Peter has traveled and lived in Colombia, Malaysia, Singapore. I mean, I asked Peter after getting to know him, is there anywhere in the world you haven't lived, Peter?
Many
He's
places
enjoyed,
I like still to go.
Peter's a gifted engineer with a background in physics, technology, and business development. He's worked for UNIDO, which is the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and later for a number of consulting groups, specializing in a wide range of technology and public services, including mobile communications, broadband, and more recently, energy technology. His special interest has been in understanding how the public interest can be improved utilizing competitive market-based solutions. And he has been involved in past years in the Christian democratic policy development in the Netherlands, where he has gained a passion for education, equity, community service, and social justice. Peter, maybe you'll talk a little bit about, as a young man, when you thought about where you wanted to go and study, and when you were dreaming about traveling and living around the world, what was that like, and what was it like when you got here to the United States?
Well, I grew up on a diet of boy books that basically talked about how young Dutch guys would go on big ships and would go and rescue the world and bring good government to everybody, and in the process colonize half the world, conquer it, etc., etc. So all very heroic.
Yeah.
And later on you discover that there are some major nuances in that story. But for me, thinking about traveling, I actually considered for a while to become a pilot, because it seemed that the only way to travel the world was to actually move other people around. But fortunately I was told not to do that, since it's more like being a bus driver on a complicated bus. And I think I've seen more of the world than I would have if I had been if I'd been a pilot over the years. So it went from this general notion, I want to see more of the world, to actually doing some traveling in university first. And part of the university, part of the things the university did for me was give me a scholarship to go and study in America for a year after I finished my master's, which is where Karen and I met, and which was, an awful lot of fun. What I later discovered from living in the different places is that, well, first of all, Europe and the US look a lot the same, but they're not. They're quite different. The way I tend to describe it is in Holland, I'm used to excellent public services for everything, good roads, cheap education, good health care, don't need to worry about that, and all of that is being taken care of. But at home, the homes here are a lot nicer, the cars here are a lot nicer, people have more money to spend. Yeah, we paid 50% taxes in Holland. We got good service for it, but that's the other side. We came out here, and that was, part of what I discovered when I came over here, is that I used to think of America as this place where everything is being developed as new and novel. But then I discovered when I came over here and wanted to start a business that I had to fill in a piece of paper that went into a file, which is for me ununderstandable. In Holland I had a company, and anybody can look it up on the internet and find out what I'm doing. Here it's somewhere in northern New Hampshire, and I don't think anybody knows where to go. I'm used to, when you go and want to have some service, everybody has all the data about you. They know what you've been doing. I mean, it's held private, but...
Sorry to interrupt, but can you speak up just a little bit?
Okay, so out in Europe, I was used to see, whenever I wanted to organize something, it would be relatively easy. My parents were, when they turned 80, which is around the time that we moved over to the States, they were taken care of. They had a team of people that looked after them and took care of them and organized things. And then the reason we came to the States was my in-laws were the same age. And there was no coordination. You needed to bring your insurance card everywhere, and Karen was traveling back and forth whenever there was a little operation or something else that needed to be done, because it's not organized. I am used to, you said when you want to go, your kids to go to school, you send them around and let them test out 4 or 5 different schools whether they like them. And then they go to the school that they prefer, which might be Montessori or multilingual or math oriented. You have all kinds of different streams. Out here you have to go to one school or you pay a fortune to go to a private school. And then they get some kind of weirdo education that has some really strange components to it, especially in some Christian schools. So America was not as ideal as I expected it. But America is also full of people who really are trying very hard to make things happen. And that's something that I see more here than I saw it in Holland. In Holland, my engagement was more at the level of political parties and talking about policy and all that kind of stuff. Out here, that's, I think, less effective, and it's more through these kind of initiatives that people really pull together and get things going. Mm-hmm. So it's different societies, and when I lived in Asia, I had one major advantage. I'm not very socially aware. I'm kind of rude sometimes, and that in Asia people accept that because you're from Europe, you don't know how to behave. So they're very patient in explaining over and over and over again what you're supposed to be doing. Out here, people kind of, are expecting Europeans to be polite and everything, and I don't know how well I meet that particular framework. But, so it looks a lot similar in culture and in the way that you do things when you're from Western Europe or from here, but in actual fact there are quite a lot of major differences, which you especially find out when you're married. Those are the things you run into. So,
Wonderful, thanks. I have a couple of. Thanks so much. Listening to our guest speakers. A couple of things come to mind, and as I have gotten to know lots of people from around the world, our immigrant community in Woburn is growing every day. And as I get to know folks, I always think, what is it like to enter a new culture, a new place, a new set of standards, a new, and striving to fit in a little bit, What are some of your challenges and dreams that you recall when you were trying to belong, when you were trying to hang out with friends, when you were trying to understand what's the fashion, what's the music I'm supposed to listen to, how do I socialize? What are some of your memories of that?
I remember.
How do I find someone to go on a date with? How do I,
I don't know. I entered 10th here in 10th grade, and I found that very quickly that I had a lot in common with some of the students than not. There was a lot of Haitians in the school, which I was very surprised to see. I don't know why I was surprised at that. And the fact that I was so eager to learn and to fit in, I kind of got myself involved with, like I said, people that were different than me, because I wanted to learn the culture. I wanted to, be able to communicate clearly with people, because I was like, well, I left my friends and the rest of my family back home, so I'm not going to come here and mope around. So I'm going to, do the best I can with whatever I'm handed, If it was my choice to come, I wouldn't, because I was very popular back home, because I sing. So I used to sing at events, graduation, weddings, you name it. I used to get booked for those things, so people knew me. So as a young lady, you like that when people give you attention. Like, a lot of times, I like the attention. It was positive attention. So when I came here, I left all of that behind, and I hated it. I didn't like my dad for a long time after I moved here. We weren't friends for a long time because I didn't want to be here. But, the more I got into the culture, I got to learn about the people living here, and, it got a little bit easier. But I had to be very conscious of, making sure that it got easier for me, not because it was, but because I didn't have a choice, because I wasn't gonna go anywhere. They weren't gonna let me go anywhere. And then one thing also you need to know is in the Haitian culture, it doesn't matter if you're 18 or 88. If your parents are still alive, you're still a child to them. My mom can come to my house and say, "Well, I have dishes in the sink, okay?" And I need to wash them right away. So I didn't have a choice. I had to, make it do. So just once I started getting comfortable with speaking to people without having to write things down, and I was able, and then my mom quickly got into a church family. We were raised in church, still in church, and at times I feel like if I wasn't part of a religious community, I don't know how I would survive life really. So we quickly found a church that we started going to, and we fit right in, and the singing and the events and all the things, the kids ministries and all this stuff started happening again. So I'm starting to feel like, okay, maybe this will work. So at the high school, I was part of the Haitian Coalition Committee. I was head of the dance committee, so I was teaching choreography for different events, and I was planning all those multicultural events either at the school or at my church. So I quickly started doing all the things that I was doing when I was back home. So I like that, which is where I also, I was married for 12 years. I met my ex-husband there at the high school. So I have a beautiful 11-year-old son from that marriage, which is my world. He's my world. He's 11 going on 33.
Beautiful boy.
So all the things kind of fall into place for me. And the church that I started going to, the youth ministry there, the young people that were there were so supportive. I remember when I would try to communicate with them in Creole, they were like, we don't speak that language, we don't understand. Not because they were being rude, but because they wanted me to speak in English so that I could get the language. So they were pushing me a lot to do better. After I graduated high school, things started getting to be a little bit more challenging from there. I was still living with my parents. Again, not by choice. I had to. I had to live with them because culturally speaking, for the most, now things are getting a little bit more modernized. The kids don't stay with the parents anymore. Once they leave for school, they don't come back. But culturally speaking, you don't leave your parents' house until you're married, which is what I did. So, I don't know if you want to wait to get into the next details, but yeah.
Sure. Wonderful. The question, the same question from Brianna. For Brianna, I already know Brianna's finding social groups, you're finding communities. What are some of the challenges culturally for you, particularly when you are communicating with your parents and your elders who have a different view of what it is to socialize in the United States? How have you found community, and how is that working in your family?
So growing up, I noticed a lot. So whenever I visit cousins in Boston or whatever, and I hanged out with their friends, they're more diverse and I related more to them because we were all the same culture. But whenever I went to school, I had a hard time fitting in because predominantly, majority of the kids were white. So whenever I try to say, oh, I went to my family's barbecue, we played lots of bachata, merengue, all that music, they're like, what's that? Or I had, arroz con habichuelas, like I start saying it in Spanish and they look at me like I'm speaking gibberish or something. But as middle school and high school progressed, I started meeting more and more people, and I met one of my best friends. Her name's Deslari, and she's Dominican as me, like me, and once I was able to tell her what I do on my weekends, I felt like I found my person, the person I could finally talk to that knew what it was truly like to live in a Dominican culture. And also, and with my dad's struggles here, he noticed he was crazy with baseball. He actually played with a lot of a lot of MLB stars now that are retired or even still playing. But when he came to America and he saw baseball wasn't the biggest thing everyone was crazy about, especially here in Boston, because Boston Bruins was the craze here. He tried his ways to find ways to connect with other people. So he joined a bunch of adult baseball leagues, softball leagues even, and that was his way of communicating with others. That's how he was able to make friendships, and he still has those long friendships. Even with work, whenever he hires someone new, if he finds out their background is Hispanic or whatever, he's instantly happy because he has someone to talk to that has that knows the background and his culture.
Thank you, Brianna. Wonderful. Wonderful. Community, we learn and we observe for all of us, the community is so important. Relationships, getting comfortable in our neighborhoods, in our schools, in our social settings, where we work, where we play, where we worship, so important to all of us. I'm always wondering about couples like Peter and Karen, because you were multicultural the moment you met, you know. And so what were some of the challenges blending your family together with your Dutch culture and your American culture, and your children came along and you were in Indonesia and you were in Malaysia and then you're in Woburn, Massachusetts? What are some of the ways that you have preserved your culture?
Yeah. So I think over the years, the greatest challenge I think is to maintain all your relationships, because it is not like, since we are living now in Woburn, we are only Woburnites. I still have my family in Holland. I have a lot of friends there, which I regularly try to look up and stay in touch with. We have friends in Asia. And so I remember when we came back after 10 years to live in the Netherlands, one of the big challenges was to find a community where we would fit in. And it was an expat community, because even though I'm Dutch, I'm too divided. And you talk about your friends and visiting your friends that are in the US, for example. We would fly up once a year to see Karen's parents, and now we're flying up once a year to visit family in Holland. That sounds extravagant. Oh, you travel so much international. No, it's not. You get into a bus that flies, and then you sit in there for 7 hours, and you go and see your family. That's it. And many people don't get that you have an interest in Dutch soccer as well as American football, and that you have an interest in badminton in Malaysia as well as other places. So I think the thing to be aware of when you're dealing with people from different cultures is you don't give up a culture to become an American. That's a 1940s idea. You leave your country, you come over here, and you never go back again. Nowadays, we stay in touch, and we travel back and forth, and that's challenging. Who do you invite for the wedding when our daughter gets married next year? How do you deal with that? Do we do a party in Hull or not? All of these things are part of your life when you're trying to live multiculturally. I think, though, the biggest issue is probably language. Other people have said that as well. Our son married a wonderful Turkish girl, and based on our experience, Karen and I, over the last 5 years, have been working very hard on our Turkish, because it is important to feel at home with the in-laws and with the family on the other side. It's not so much that you can have long conversations, but nowadays I have learned that when I go to Saudi or China for business visits, I try to at least make out the lettering, because it gives you a feeling of not being alienated so much. When people talk in the bus and you can pick up out even 2 or 3 words out of what's being said, you at least know they're not making jokes about you. Right? Language can be an enormous alienator. that puts people very far apart from each other and unwilling to meet, even for dinner or whatever. And as soon as you cross that a little bit, even with translation and other tools, you bring people closer together. So I'm dyslexic. I don't really like learning languages, but I have had to get into it because I like to be part of the culture that I'm going to, and remain part of that. You know, it's still something that I keep in touch with because I spent part of my life there.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. We'd like to open up now to invite conversation, questions, ideas, experiences. We're getting out of our comfort zones sometimes to learn new cultures, to learn new languages. In our relationships, we often want to learn about each other so that our relationships are stronger and more powerful. Any questions, ideas, experiences? By the way, bad news is okay to talk about. Living in a multicultural community also creates conflict and friction. And we know from our colleagues and students in the Embrace Club that it's okay to have difficult conversations. Questions, ideas? What a quiet audience, and so many of you. Yes?
Is there any like words that you love to teach others about your culture? Like dances, music,
Yeah.
or like history?
Mine is cooking. I love cooking.
Yeah.
I love to cook.
I've had.
I love to share the Haitian cuisine with others. I did a cooking event with Inclusive Eats a few weeks ago, which was very, very fun
Wonderful.
here at the Methodist Church down the street. It was really nice. So, but there's a challenge in that as well. The challenge is that in the Haitian culture, we don't necessarily have recipes. Like, we don't measure things. We cook with our hearts. Some people say you stop when you hear the ancestors say so. So that's the challenging part for me. When somebody asks me, can you send the recipe? I'm like, oh, I don't. So I'd rather demonstrate the cooking, you know. I think that's more fun too. You get to talk about it, you know what I mean, the interaction and all that. So I think it's much better to demonstrate the cooking. So that's one of my favorite ways to share the culture.
Brianna, do you like to share parts of your culture with other people?
Yes, I do. So every time when Christmas time rolls around, I love to share the story of how me and my family celebrate Christmas. So in lots of Hispanic cultures, we wait until 12 a.m. on Christmas Day. So all day, every year we're in my grandma's tiny apartment. It's my dad and our family, his brother and his family, and his two sisters and his family. So we all get together, we eat, we sing, we cook, we dance, and then once 12, and then me and my cousins are usually hiding in the rooms, complaining, when are we gonna get to open the presents? So once 12 a.m. hits, that's when we all celebrate. We start blasting Christmas music, because in our Hispanic culture, Christmas Eve is a day where we go to church, we pray, and then Christmas Day is the day for the relaxation, spending time with family. Also, too, I like to teach my friends how to dance like bachata merengue, and they always ask me, they go, what's the right steps? But there is no right step. All you do is that once you get the rhythm and once you find your beat, it just comes to you in a way.
Thank you. Excellent. Excellent. How have you and your family found ways to share some of your heritage and your traditions, Peter? I bet you're sharing it a lot at church.
We do quite a lot of things as a family that still goes back to Holland, but we also did a lot of American things in when we were over in the Netherlands. So we would have Thanksgiving with friends in the Netherlands, and nowadays we still do Santa Claus, which is on the 5th of December. It's a really Dutch kind of thing, different from here. The center is not the packages and the presents. The center really is to make fun of one another. And that, I mean that very seriously. I mean, there is an element in Dutch culture where by making fun of somebody, saying, hey, you're kind of silly in this way or that way, you're also saying you're still okay. I accept that in you, but I can talk about it. And Sinterklaas is the time we really do that. So we would go out of our way to kind of needle people as much as we can. And that makes Karen sometimes very uncomfortable because it is rather direct. So that's I think one major difference. The other thing that I noticed that I really took over from the Netherlands here, and my kids did too, is biking. It sounds strange, but the Dutch bike a lot. It's a flat country, and I started noticing that my brothers, who are a few years younger than me, stayed in much better shape than I did, because I was driving to work every day. So I bought myself an electric bike and have been commuting quite a lot, and it has helped quite a lot. But the Dutch culture of basically using the car only for long distance and doing everything in town on a bike, Karen and I will usually bike to Boston, and anything that close by. I did, it was for me an eye-opener when we first rented bikes in Boston, how small Boston is. You think it's a big city when you're taking the subway. But when you go on the road, it's 5 minutes from, the center down to Boston University. It's nothing. But it's a subway, it takes you a while. So, and with cars it's totally impossible because you're sitting in there for the whole time. So, using that as an alternative, I found to be something that we still very much, and it's not just me, it's my son does the same thing. Daughters are not so much, but
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. Thank you. We have questions. We have sharing. We have any ideas about our guest speakers' talks. This audience is very quiet tonight. Please, Rebecca.
This might be, especially for Brianna, but or maybe some of your classmates will contribute too, but I was curious a little bit about what the Embrace Club, what kinds of activities you do inside school or outside of school.
So inside of school, we do a lot of events to help involve other cultures into our community to make them feel welcomed in a way. So this past school year, during Ramadan, we made a prayer room so the Muslim community of our school were able to take time out of their schooling and were able to pray during the time that they needed. Also, too, we every year around June we go in support for the to end gun violence riot, where we go to the center, and it's a peaceful protest where we say our reasons why it's important to end gun violence in the U.S. and outside of school we do a lot of the know your neighbors events.
Yep.
And overall our main message is everyone is welcomed into our community, no matter your race, heritage, your background, or your ethnicity.
Yep. I can second that. The Embrace Club have presented some of those wonderful cultural presentations at our Know Your Neighbor Woburn event. Presentations about tradition, about culture, about the challenges of getting to know each other, the difficult conversations that students can have together, to grow closer together, to grow in more understanding and in more mutual respect, right? So we have really loved having the Embrace Club involved with us. You all also are involved with SCI events and lots of other events at the Boys and Girls Club. I see some youth grant pitch folks here that participate in an annual youth grant pitch contest, which creates teams of students who develop an actual presentation and pitch in order to earn grant award money. It's so fabulous. It's wonderful. Did I see somebody raise a yes, please?
Yeah, I think this is more directed at you, because first off, the panel was great. I love seeing diversity, especially in this city.
Thank you.
Why is it that, and I'm speaking for me, that I haven't heard any more of Know Your Neighbor? And what is Know Your Neighbor? Is it in all cities in the Commonwealth, or is it a Cleveland-based program?
We would love nothing better than this idea to spread all over the Commonwealth. But we are still a very small organization. We have some of our organizers are here. There are 2 or 3 of our board members here. We gathered together with a very simple idea that we would like to try to promote and grow these kind of multicultural opportunities for people to come together. And so we are centered on programs, events, almost entirely focused on multicultural community building.
Now,
And
where are
so
you based out of?
we are based here in Woburn,
It is in Woburn, yes.
and if my publicity has not reached you, I need to do a better job.
You know, this is the first I have heard of
I'm
it
so
from my
delighted.
wife.
I'm so delighted.
Because I worked at a hotel in Woburn that still houses the Haitian community.
Mhm.
And it was so wonderful to hear your story. My boss actually was born in Haiti. And everything you said tonight is what he tells me on the bus every day. You know, the food, the culture in Haiti.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I seen it in the hotel I was working at for a short time where, you know, it wasn't really diverse for them. They were being ridiculed. You
Yep.
know, some of the other people at the hotel, well, if they can have it for nothing, why can't we?
Right.
You know, and I think we all have our own prejudices as we grow up, but I found for me, the older I got, the less prejudicial I was. And I would say to these people, do you know what's actually going down in Haiti? Would you want your kids to be in the middle of the street and getting shot down? It's the least we can do.
Right.
And that's why seeing the diversity up there, you know, it's wonderful. And Brianna, you've got one of the most wonderful stories I ever heard. You know, I wish my family could be as connected as your family is. You know, I really do, and I know Peter from church, and again, it was wonderful to hear you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Everybody needs to learn more about Know Your Neighbor Woburn.
I mean, one of the things that I discovered in that context, you know, having lived in Malaysia and Indonesia among a large, mostly Muslim population, some of the attitudes that I hear about Muslims over here is, you know, they're radical.
Yep.
Yeah, come on.
Yep.
I know these people,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, of course there are crazies there. There are crazies here too. For everybody. But you get. It's so important that we actually meet each other rather than just talk about each other.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. While we're talking about Know Your Neighbor Woburn, I will recognize Shafiq Samajeri is here. Our board member Chuck Viola is here. Anthony Langone just left. We have organizers here. Jacoby is one of our favorite Embrace Club organizers. Vitali Memus is here. So we are growing this community of multicultural energy around events, around programs, and we would very much like to have more volunteers, more organizers, more people who think this is important. We are building the plane while we fly it. We have had ideas come out of conversations. We did an art making event with children last winter that was so cool. And it was sitting at a table here with 3 parents who said, you know what, let's do a multicultural art making event with kids. It was this place was filled with children making Asian American art and African American art and learning to not only be in community with each other, but really learning to have fun together, sharing each other's culture, sharing each other's traditions. And so we want to do more of this. Thanks very much for asking about that. I appreciate it. Any more questions for our celebrity guest speakers? Yes, please.
When you came to America and saw the culture here, was there any like similarities that you saw, or like any like differentiations?
I didn't completely hear the question.
Can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry, I didn't completely hear the question.
When you first came to America and saw the culture, did you see any similarities, like differentialities?
The similarities that I experienced were always when I was around people from my background, my same background, language, food, music, just the community. So that was always like in church, because in our culture we have three things we call l'école, l'église, la caille, which is school, church, and home.
And
Those
home.
are the two places kids were allowed to be
School, church, or
in the
family.
Haitian household. So those are the places I was always at. So there was always a lot of similarities from what I've experienced back home in those spaces. But when I was, when I started working, or I started meeting with friends outside of those spaces, then I'm, experiencing new things. And I'm now seeing things that I used to read in books back home, or things I used to see on the TV or in movies. So I'm experiencing them. Then it was different but fun to see now that I'm part of those movies, if I should say so. So, yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you discovered when you came to the United States about your culture that you observed was simply not true? Because there's so many misconceptions in the United States about what is Italian culture, what's Jewish culture, what is Haitian culture. And we find out so much of what we think is true isn't true.
That everything was handed down over to you. That was a big thing. When you're in the United States, you have money, you can do this, you have a job, it was easy to do a lot of, nope, it's not true. I found out very quickly when I started working that you had to work hard for your money, and then the harder you work, the more of your money is taken from your paycheck. So that was very tough for me to see. Back when my mom ran a restaurant, and she was very successful at it. So, it was her own business. So all the money came to her. And then when we came here and we're working, and then we're being told that, this amount of money is going to come out of your paycheck even before you get it, I was like, what is even that? So, and then when they said, well, that money is being taken so they can work on the roads and do, I said, well, the roads are not looking like they're using my money to fix them. So yeah,
Yep.
that was the hard part for
Yep.
me. When
Yep.
they tell you everything is handed over to you, but
Yep.
that's not true. And when I was living back home, I was 3 years old when my father left Haiti. So he wasn't able to go back to see us for a long time after that because he had to get his papers in order. But he would send money or cargo every month. He would send stuff. So we were never without. Again, back home, you don't go to school if you don't. You have to pay in advance, 3 to 6 months in advance. You have to pay the school. If you owe money at the school, they will send you back home to go get your parents, or you can't come back until your parents have the money to bring you back to school, so you can stay. I never experienced getting sent home. I was very blessed in that sense. So those are the kind of things, like when I think about, I'm like, I was very, very blessed to not be able to experience a lot of, like when the families that are here now, I explaining the things that they going through or they've been through, and now seeing them here, I'm like, I really lived in a very blessed time, and for me to find myself here, I can't just sit there and not do anything to help them come out of that. So yeah.
Thank you, Andrines. Brianna, any stereotypes or any pictures or portrayals of your culture or your people that you discovered wasn't true when you were growing up?
Well, growing up in the United States, I remember walking walking, because I grew up in the city of Boston. I wasn't born into the city of Woburn. I probably moved to Woburn probably around when I was in kindergarten or first grade. And growing up in Boston, I just saw a bunch of different diverse people. And I remember walking with my mom or walking with my dad, and I see other people, like kids myself, walking with their parents, and their parents are diverse. But when I came to Woburn, I saw there wasn't that much diversity when I was younger. But as time progressed and more people came into Woburn, I felt at home. Like I felt like finally there was diversity in this city and town. And my parents always tell me, and my younger siblings, no matter the person's race, heritage, or nationality, you treat everyone with respect, because God created everyone as a whole, and everyone's the same. Even though someone have different personality than you or acts differently in school than you, we are all the same people, and at the end of the day, we're all working for the same thing, which is to have a meaning in life and purpose.
Thank you, Brianna. Thank you. Peter, stereotypes and images when you were first coming to the U.S. about
the Netherlands?
About the Netherlands or Dutch culture that you were like, wow, that's
I-
not what
I
we're
would
about.
say
That's
the-
not what
the-
we're about.
The most clear thing is that hardly anybody in America knows what the Netherlands are. I mean, we're called the Dutch, but the Deutsche are actually the Germans. We are not Germans. Our capital is not Copenhagen, it's Amsterdam. So most people don't know anything about what the Netherlands really is. It has this reputation of being incredibly tolerant, which, in the 1960s, 70s has been true for a while, but actually, we have a history that's very similar to the British. We worked a lot with them, colonial empires, with everything that goes with that wasn't particularly tolerant for large groups of people. We were a republic early on, but that also has its restrictions. So, most people just don't know what the Netherlands are. That's, I think, the upshot of it. I think there's one other thing that might be good to mention. I'm probably quite different from the two of you in that I came to America quite late in life. I was, in 2008, so I must have been 62, 63. And there's a big difference in coming permanently to a place later in life. I know because I've been going to all these other places, so I know how it went over there. When you're young and you're foreign, people say, oh, fun, nice, like to meet you. So you meet all kinds of people way beyond your station and your capabilities and whatever. Doesn't really matter, but everybody likes to talk to you. That's nice. When you are in a later phase of your life, you come from a situation where, you know people. In the Netherlands, I know people. I can get things done. I can meet people that I want to by just calling somebody. And out here, nobody knows that. And I think for many of your parents, it's the same. I see that with older immigrants here a lot. They're completely underutilized. You have these health workers and doctors who are driving cars because they don't have the right kind of papers. And I think, I was very lucky. I was in a situation that I could make things happen the way I wanted to, so it didn't really matter for me. But I think for many of the older immigrants, there is really a large amount of underutilization of their talents, capabilities, and experience, with which we could do an awful lot more if we were willing to engage with them and kind of pierce through the language barrier, which is often the main barrier for that, and figure out what they really can do and then use them fully. That's more fun for them and it's better for us.
I hate to sell the show, but my question is you. I don't know how to pronounce it, so I don't
And
want to
dreams.
say. Did you find a lot of discrimination when you come over from Haiti?
Yeah, to a certain extent, mostly at the high school, because before I was accepted at the Caucasian table, there was a lot of pushback because I was like the oddball because all the Haitians are sitting over there while you over here. That was the attitude that we get, and I was very vocal. I said, because I want to sound like you, so I need to sit right here so I can hear you talk, so I can sound like you. So there was a lot of pushback. There was a lot of name calling, and bullying wasn't a thing where I came from in Haiti. Like this is just, but I don't want to say bullying wasn't a thing, but we didn't see it as bullying. Just like you were talking about earlier, how you poke at people, but you still accept them. It's just a way to have fun together. It was fun. For example, the kids used to call me up like I'm not gonna say like Creole word, but it was like they would call me like uppity and like you think you're better than everybody else because the clothes that I wear nobody else was wearing them because they were coming from here. I was never sent home from school because my school was always paid off. Like the clothes that they would wear to go out to church and to events, that's what I was wearing to run around the neighborhood in. So that made me different. So I got picked on a lot when I was little, but I didn't see it as people being mean to me. I would just brush it up and we're still playing. They're still calling me names, but we're still playing together, But when I came here, as much as I try to suppress that and ignore it, but it's like they wanted to get to me. Like they would push, to say things, and then I quickly realized, they're really trying to hurt me, and it's not really. They don't want to really be my friend.
Now, how long have you been in Woburn?
So I moved to Woburn in November 2012. So I've been here since 2012, and it
how
wasn't.
has it been since you lived here, as far as racial epithet, and things like that?
When I moved to Woburn, I moved in a little house at a dead-end street down on Carter Street. And it was the most peaceful, most beautiful little space that I could find. I picked it because there was a big outdoor space, which is what I was looking for. And it was very quiet, very, out of the way. I used to only sleep in Woburn. Everything I did was outside of Woburn. I didn't know anywhere around Woburn. I would only see places when I drive to leave to go do what I have to do at school, work, or church. And then I used to go to Market Basket in Somerville. That's how bad, okay? That's how bad. I didn't know that side of Woburn, maybe like 4 or 5 years of me leaving into Woburn. That side where Market Basket is over there. So I would drive this way to go to Somerville to do everything. My church was in Waltham, so I would drive here, take the highway, go to church, and drive back into my house. So it wasn't until the family started coming in last year. That's when I realized Woburn is amazing. Like I'm starting to see the people, how people, love people. Like it was just amazing. And the person who really got me involved into the community is Miss Vitaly over there in the yellow shirt. She got me involved into the community. I didn't know there was Haitians living in Woburn. That's how bad it was, okay? I thought I was the only Haitian. The Haitians that I used to see, people work in Woburn and then they leave to go to wherever they live. But it's until like last year when the family started coming in, that's when I really started. Now I feel at home. Feel at home, yeah.
Well, I think I've come to a place where I can wave the flag and say thank you so very much to our panelists, to our guest speakers. Thanks to all of you. I will take one moment to make the fundraising pitch. It's part of my job as the executive director. If you can pitch in to help us keep this Sharing Our Story series going and our other big events coming later this year, we would appreciate it. We have a collection box as well if you want to drop some cash into the collection box. I will tell you all that we are gathering here again for a Sharing Our Stories evening in celebration of our Woburn Veterans community. On Thursday, November 14th, we have Mr. Bob Davis, our Director of Veteran Services. We have Mr. Anthony Langone, who you met a little earlier, leading our Disabled American Veterans Chapter and our Woburn Veterans Council. And we have Ms. Jessie Wetzel, U.S. Army retired and a member of our school committee, gathering for some community conversation. We hope you can all join us on Thursday, November 14th. Please pitch in if you can, and please don't go home. We can hang out and get to know each other. Everybody should meet someone new before they go home. Thanks very much.